check with an attorney. That's the first thing. And then make sure that you cover yourself. And it's a good question because statute of limitations, people don't really think about them very often. We have our James Dogle here tonight with us, and he is a criminal defense attorney. And I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then I want to ask you a couple of things about criminal statute of limitations. So, James, tell us about yourself.
I'm James Dogle, of course. I've been practicing criminal law for coming up on 24 years now. I have a local office here in Panama City, and I handle some of the surrounding counties also.
Wonderful. I knew you have car will travel
yes.
if it's necessary. So, yeah.
And that's kind of how we first met. Is, we were both public defenders way back.
That's right. I used to practice criminal law. It's been a hot second. So, you know, things are ever evolving in that. So I'm glad that you're here because I don't think I could answer all these questions anymore because I'm not up to date on all the things. So tell us about like criminal statutes of limitations. What are they? Who, you know, what's what with that?
Well, the legislature lays those out, and that's in statute 775.15. In case anybody wants to do some easy reading, they're welcome to sit there and go there and get kind of the breakdown on that. But normally what you're looking at is on the misdemeanors 2 years, felonies of the third degree, you're looking at 3 and then 4, but then those things can significantly change, especially with what's considered the elderly. That's anybody over the age of 65, Medicare, exploitation, those type of things. And then there's an awful lot of sex crimes that those things change. And there's some things that don't even have a statute of limitations now.
Right, exactly. Capital stuff and other things that are big bad stuffs. So what is the thing that you typically find in your practice that people are constantly asking you questions about? I mean, what are the things that you consistently get questions about? Is it about DUIs? Is it about, you know, what do you hear from?
I mean, DUIs, and I've been on, Perry and Young's been nice enough to invite me on many a times for DUI type stuff. That always seems to be kind of the hot topic that you get, but there are a lot of other criminal type of things out there, theft crimes, battery crimes. Even we were talking earlier about disorderly conduct. You know, and you get a lot of those things that are associated with people that come on vacation, spring break, things like that. We still have spring break. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of disorderly conducts tonight coming from Gulf Coast Jam. We may be the handful of people that are not at Gulf Coast Jam.
I think we might be. I think pretty much everybody I know on any of my Facebook or any feeds are just, it's like Gulf Coast Jam, Gulf Coast Jam. So I hope they're having a good time.
Yeah, and hopefully they're being safe.
Hopefully they're being safe, and they're not driving and drinking and all those sorts of things. So hopefully they're being safe.
I always recommend, have a plan before you go.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a driver, plan on leaving the vehicle. We have plenty of services now, Uber, Lyft, those type of things.
There's really no excuse anymore.
No.
I mean, for not being responsible at that point. So.
But as you were saying on some of those types of charges, DUI seems to be a hot topic. The one thing I always get when on a repeated question that always seems to come up is they didn't read me my rights.
Yes.
And I think people automatically associate with their rights not being read to them that my charge would automatically be dismissed. And the first question I ask is, well, did you say anything?
Right.
And they're like,
did you give a statement?
They're like, no. I'm like, well, then there's really nothing going on there. And then I go, then the statement actually needs to have some significance to it.
Right.
I go, it has to be about the crime.
It can't just be, I just got my hair done.
Right. It has to be what we call incriminating at that point, and something that would be used against you. And so that's what matters. But even then, it doesn't mean that the case automatically goes away. It just means that that statement would be suppressed, meaning that the state would not be able to use that statement.
I just remember all that same thing, but they didn't read me my Mirandas.
Right.
And no, you don't have to do that. Yeah. You don't have to always do that.
Yeah, and and the other part too, is when somebody's actually in custody.
Right.
You don't technically have to be in handcuffs to be in custody. It means that you're detained and you're not free to leave at that time. And that can be the officer standing there holding you. It could be having you in the back of the car. So there's varying things of what detained would be.
It can even just be, you stand here.
Correct.
You stand right here. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, that officer has a lawful duty at that point, and he's telling you and giving you a directive
at
that time.
That's right. So that actually works to some defendants' favor, because sometimes you really can't be in custody yet because there's not probable cause that's developed yet. So
Right.
that has helped on occasion with getting some things thrown out. But so the custody thing is even more important than the Miranda sometimes.
Sometimes you're correct.
Yeah. So let's see. What is the most interesting case that you have read recently, or if you've had lately?
Oh boy.
I mean, obviously no names, but
It kind of went back to some of the back to the DUI. Always seems to be somewhat interesting.
Yes.
Now, when I first started, it was very rare to get some kind of video.
Right.
Now you're probably looking at 80-85% of the cases now have some type of video. A lot of
So,
body cam video.
body cam. Yeah.
Before there was hardly ever any body cam, and all you have to do is go back probably 5 years ago.
Right.
Not a whole lot of body cam at that time. What you were relying on was in-car video. And what I tell a lot of clients too is, video can be very helpful for both sides.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's not very helpful for a client.
Right.
And then sometimes it's not very
I
helpful.
actually have one of those in a personal injury case recently. I was like, okay, no.
And part of what I tell them too is I said, it's not like they're mic'd up like us.
Right.
I go, so sometimes, they're going to hear the officer because he has a mic.
Right.
And if there's any other elemental variables, wind, rain, those type of things, it's going to be even harder to hear you.
Right.
Okay. At that time, and it's only going to show. Sometimes an officer would get really close, and they're not really going to see you that well. When they're talking about how your face looked or something like that, especially in a DUI, because they're referring to bloodshot, watery eyes. And same with slurred speech and those type of things. So sometimes where you're really hoping those things you could view, sometimes the officer may be too close and needs to step back a little bit to be able to get the full frame at that time.
That makes sense.
I had a time before where an officer's doing field sobriety tests, and I'm like, that would be great if they did it in front of the car. I go. You can hear some stuff going on off to the side, but you don't actually see anything at that time.
That's always a trip. Okay, that's great. It'd be wonderful since you have this perfect, body cam and the dash cam and all the stuff to do that. But if you don't put them in front of it where it's going to be, it's not going to help anybody.
No,
at the end of the day.
And the technology is really good.
It is.
It's getting a lot better. Like everything, it's not perfect by far.
No, it's not. No, technology is always very interesting. So you said you've been practicing for over 24 years. Have you only practiced in criminal law, or have you done anything else?
Only criminal. Every now and then I venture into a little civil stuff, and then I realize I need to stay right where I'm at doing my criminal. So.
Yeah, civil's a different breed of cat for sure. It's been a lot of fun learning how to do it and getting away and branching out into something different. So it's been fun for me. I do miss the stories we got a lot of times with the criminal stuff though.
Yeah, it's pretty entertaining.
There were some stories. There were always some stories. So we have an email question. My vehicle was stored at a residence where I'd stayed time to time. A search warrant was issued for the occupant of said residence. Nowhere on that warrant was my name or my vehicle. The cops broke my window, gained access, found some paraphernalia and my ID, located me and arrested me. Was this legal? All right, so I'm gonna open this.
Yes.
So search and seizure law. Fourth Amendment, back in the day, it was just basically whether it was a reasonable search and seizure. That's how we started out. And then everything got more and more and more nuanced as cases happened and as the case law developed. And so search and seizure is not cut and dried and clear at all. I just remember every single time I had a new case, a criminal case, I had to go back and go research because it could be week to week that it was developing and changing depending on what was going on. And like we're talking about the various things that they were looking for, the various drugs that they were looking for, the various kinds of houses that they were trying to go and search depending on what they were going after. So it was always for me, I remember it was an exercise in just really educating myself again each time I had to go in and go research it every single time. So tell me what's going on in this one. I mean, is this where are we on this?
Well, I think in this scenario, it's probably going to be okay, because a lot of times these warrants, and it may not, once again, you have to look at the four corners of that document, okay, to sit there and look. But most of the time, it would also include the vehicles outside of that residence,
Right.
okay? And especially an individual that sounds like they've been there, you know, it's not clear from the question how often, but certainly more than just somebody that came over and had dinner that night, you know, the one time. So normally what you would have is a lot of times, like if there's a shed, you know, it would include that out parcel there, you know, and also the vehicles at that time, because they realize that people may put drugs in the vehicles versus having them actually in the house. So that's why a lot of times the warrant would be a little more expansive on those type of things. And a lot of those warrants, you know, are pretty boilerplate, where they use kind of the same type of stuff. What varies is how they've got probable cause. Okay, that's what changes on what's actually submitted to the judge at that time. Now, there's still things that, just because they got the warrant, just because they got searched, doesn't mean that you can't maybe come back and attack the warrant. There may have been things that were put in the probable cause affidavit that may not be correct, may not be accurate, and that could sit there and change things and lead to those items possibly being suppressed.
That's very good. That's very good. Well, if you have a question or comment, go to lawcall.com, Panama City, or email us anytime at that time. But we're going to take our first commercial break. Welcome back to Law Call. This is Kelly Robertson again, and I'm here with James Dogle, a criminal defense attorney here in town, very well established, 24 years at the craft, over 24 years at the craft. We're giving away our age, James. It's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It's a reminder.
It's a reminder, exactly. Goodness gracious, it's been a while. So we have another email question. Does a DUI for another state carry over and become relevant in a new DUI charge here in Florida? James, you want to just take that one away?
Yeah, I'll jump on that one right away. The answer is yes. So in other words, if you had another DUI in another state, they could use it just like it was here in Florida, and that you got the DUI here. And where that really has a lot of bearing is for the basis on mandatory minimums that we have. If you get 2 DUIs within 5 years, there's mandatory 10 days jail, a 5-year license suspension, If you get 3 DUIs within 10 years, there's mandatory jail time, and there's also a 10-year license suspension at that point. So things really increase during that time period, and they could certainly use, if you got one from Georgia or Tennessee, that's where we would see things like that happen.
So it's not that the DUI actually transfers here and it's a charge in Florida, it's a charge in Tennessee or Georgia or whatever, and it remains there, but it affects basically your points here in Florida.
Right, it's going to be used as an enhancement type purpose.
Right, it's going to enhance your points.
You know, there's certain things that they can use a prior to go ahead and enhance. And in Florida, if you have a 4th DUI, then that's a felony at that time. And it's the same as if somebody had a battery charge, a second battery charge could be charged as a felony at that time. So those are some of the things people need to realize.
Your priors can affect what happens to you in another charge later on down the road in terms of how much more basically punishment you can get for that particular charge. So it's important to pay attention to these things and try not to do them again if they're
you know, everybody makes mistakes.
Yes.
Try to minimize your mistakes. Try to keep it to 1 at that point.
And always call a lawyer. always call a lawyer.
And you know, we were talking about different types of criminal type charges, and you know, one of the things and we were talking about being detained and those type of things. You know, there's the part of what an arrest is too, and there's times where you can actually be given a notice to appear or given a ticket. Okay, so a lot of times when you get a ticket, that's a speeding ticket at that time. Okay, and you have to pay a fine. You can do traffic school in order to keep the points off.
Might not require a court appearance at all. Just
correct.
Go to the clerk's office and pay your fine.
And then there are some mandatory court appearances on traffic tickets. In other words, if you're doing 30 over, or if there was an accident and you were cited for careless driving, failure to yield, where there's serious bodily injury or death, those require mandatory court appearances. It does not mean that if you're found guilty of that you're going to face any type of jail time, but there could be license suspensions that are involved based on those type of charges.
Right.
You know, especially with serious bodily injury and death at that time, there's you know, mandatory.
Well, yes.
at that time, and then you know, the other part too is on the criminal end, when somebody gets that, you'll hear ROR, you'll hear notice to appear, you'll hear in lieu of arrest. You know, those are the type of terms that you'll hear. That's basically an officer could arrest you if they wanted to on the charge, but instead they would give you that notice to come to court. And some people don't completely take that as serious as they should, realizing just because they weren't arrested that it is a criminal charge,
right.
And that they need to treat it that way.
So do you have people coming to you and saying, but I wasn't arrested? I didn't go to jail. Why, how come I'm being, put in jail now, or, for not showing up?
Right, because what'll happen is they won't show up, or we get a lot of folks that come on vacation, they'll get back home, they forget about it. And then they're trying to figure that out later on, and a judge has already most likely issued a warrant at that time.
Back in the day when we had spring break in full effect here in Panama City, the way it used to be, I don't know how many folks remember, but there were just hundreds of kids that were getting arrested every day. And I can't tell you how many of them would come back the next year and get arrested again, and they never dealt with their charge from the year before either. It's like, man, you just need to stop coming to Panama City. You need to stop coming to the beach for your party.
No, it's no different than I had somebody that's, had 4 or 5 theft charges. And I go, you're going to have to find a new profession because you're not very good at this.
You're very bad at this.
You're not very good. I go, because every time you're doing it, it seems like you're getting caught at that time.
Yes, that's seemed like the way it felt for these kids on spring break too.
And I think one of the other things I was going to point out to our audience too is what some of the penalties are on some of these types of charges. And what you're looking at in Florida, you have 2 types of misdemeanor charges. You have first-degree misdemeanors, and those are punishable by up to a year in the county jail. And then you have second-degree misdemeanors, and those are punishable by up to 60 days in the county jail. You can also have probation on those. The second degree would be a maximum period of probation of 6 months, where the first-degree misdemeanor would be up to a year of probation at that time. Then when you get to felonies, you have a first-degree felony. and that's punishable by up to 30 years. Second degree felony that's punishable by up to 15 years. And then a third degree felony that's punishable by up to 5 years. And then Florida also has a lot of things that are mandatory minimum type things for drug trafficking. We also work on a score sheet that has a point system.
Yes.
That factors in at that time of what the lowest permissible sentence is. And one of the things that I always try to point out to individuals, you know, people don't realize Florida's pretty tough on their sentencing.
Yes.
In comparison to a lot of other states.
We're very conservative.
Yeah. And we don't.
Politicians love to get up there and be tough on crime.
Right. And we don't have, you know, parole like a lot of states do. If you hear somebody that's up for parole, that would be almost near impossible because they kind of did away with that in the late 70s, early 80s. Jeb Bush, that was the governor at that time, did truth in sentencing, and also with doing away with the parole, they also imposed a mandatory sentence of 85%.
Right.
So you have to serve 85% of your sentence. So
you get 15% off of whatever you do with good behavior. You
Correct.
can get it taken away from you. That 15% can go away, but with good behavior, you do get that.
Exactly.
Which is good. Which is good. So at least you get something for your effort. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take another break real quick, and we'll be right back with you. Welcome back, everybody. We're back to Law Call again. Unfortunately, it's been such a blast being with James. We've blown through this entire session of this. It's been so much fun talking to him and catching up with him. If we didn't get to your question tonight, please go to lawcall.com/Panama City, and you can email us, and you can tell us, you know, whatever. And we always get those emails, so please do that. We do apologize. I really have enjoyed. It's been fun catching up with you. Thank you for.
And if anybody has a criminal question, they're welcome to call my office. I'm happy to sit there and, you know, try to answer any questions. I certainly appreciate Perry and Young.
Well, we appreciate
inviting me on. You know, I can't thank you all enough.
His telephone number is 850-763-0900. If anybody needs to talk to him tomorrow, it's actually up on the screen for you right there. We will fight for you. I love that. We will fight for you. So we do have some shout outs for some folks. Rick from the Marlin, hey Rick, Good to see you. Thanks for calling in and asking for a shout out. Certainly that's wonderful. I'm sure Miss Pam's probably watching. Good evening, Miss Pam. Hope you're feeling well. I don't know if my family's watching, but I hope that maybe my husband is. He's actually tending to his father who's not doing very well, very ill. So to Richard, my father-in-law, and to my husband who's being a good nurse for him, and to my kids, and to my parents, Barbara and John. So any shout outs for you?
Well, yeah, I have my 2 daughters. The littlest one, Olivia,
greatest.
and she wanted me to refer to her as Love Bug tonight when I told her I was going to be on TV, because she always sees Larry Perry on the billboards, and she goes, "Dad, that's your friend, Mr. Larry.
That's your friend."
That's your friend." And then, of course, we can't forget Isabella, my little pumpkin, and then, of course, my beautiful wife, Shay. I
Shay.
love you all, and certainly appreciate all your love and support.
It's always good when you have that going on. And I know that you were going body surfing, or she was doing some boogie boarding.
Yeah, had Isabella out there in the water today. We had some surf, and she caught a few nice little waves.
Super fun.
So.
Well, I hope that everybody's very, very safe coming home from the Gulf Coast Jam tonight, and that it has been a big blast for everybody this whole weekend. We appreciate you being with us, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you again next Sunday after the news, where we'll be taking more of your questions about the legal system. Good night, everybody.
Good night.